Well, hey everybody, and welcome to this midweek review with Mr. John. For about the last couple months, we have been talking about Genesis. We've been in the book of Genesis. We started with creation, Adam and Eve. We've gone up to Abraham, and we talked last week about Jacob and Esau and how it was kind of weird how Jacob wasn't the best of people when it came to following kind of God's rules that we know, right? But Jacob actually had a heart for God. He had a heart that God could see was going to change and follow him. Where Esau, he kind of seemed like, even though he was hairy and stinky and all that, he was a hunter and he just kind of seemed to do things probably the way they should back then, but God could see his heart and it was hardened, and he had kind of a hate in his heart. And so in this story of Jacob and Esau, the one who seemed not so good actually got God's blessing. Well, when Jacob got God's blessing and Esau found out about it, Esau was mad. Now, so Rebecca, trying to save Jacob's life, formulates a plan, gets Jacob with some of their men and animals, and they send him off. I mean, he's fleeing. He's running away. He's got to get away from Esau because Esau is going to kill him if he gets his hands on him. And Esau, we know, was a great hunter, probably very strong, and Jacob was not as strong as Esau, so Esau probably could have done it. So Jacob is fleeing. Well, as he is out, he's fleeing. He's been traveling for a bit, and you know, when you travel, it doesn't matter. You get in the back seat of a car, and what do you want to do? You want to nod off. Jacob's pretty tired from the travel, so he lays down to go to sleep. He grabs a big old rock and he sets it down and he uses that as his pillow, and he lays down and he's sitting there and he falls asleep. When he has what we could probably call is a kind of weird, crazy dream, right? He dreams that God is sitting on the throne. And he sits there and sees a ladder, or in some Bibles it says a staircase, of angels going up and down from earth back to heaven, heaven to earth, back and forth. And this represents that there is a connection. There's a connection between God and earth, and the angels are coming back and forth. That there is a connection between God and humanity here on earth. But God does something else. God sits there and he talks to Jacob in his dream. And he tells Jacob, he goes, listen, you're going to be blessed. I'm going to give you the number of descendants as there are grains of sand on a beach, or dust in the world. Now think about that. Didn't we hear something very similar a few weeks back when we were talking about Abraham? When Abram, he was actually Abram at the time, God came to him and said, you will have descendants that number the stars in the sky. And it was right after that, God changed Abram's name to Abraham. So we hear the same kind of promise, same kind of covenant. Covenant means promise. So if you hear the word covenant, God gave Abraham a covenant. It means God gave Abraham a promise. He had just now gave Jacob a promise that if he continues on the path that he's on, following God, he's going to give him the same number of descendants as grains of sand on a beach. Can you imagine? You ever pour sand out of your hand? Just one little tiny thing that comes out of your hand, that's a grain of sand. If you've ever played a game and you've had the timer that you flip over that's got the little sand thing that comes down, each of those little tiny grains of sand that pour out, that last like a minute, I think is how long, you've got each grain of sand pouring out of that. Just imagine the expanse of every beach, every lake, and all the sand that is there. That's the promise God gave Jacob. And he says, you will be part of the family of God. And that's a great promise, isn't it? I think we all, no matter how we grew up, how we lived our lives, no matter how we feel about our brother and sister, we all want that close-knit family. And that's what God is promising Jacob in this moment. But more than that, if we look at this and we understand that we are descendants of Abraham, that we are descendants of Jacob, this promise that God just made to Jacob and to Abraham includes us. We are all part of the family of God. Well, right after God says this to Jacob, Jacob wakes up and he's like, man, I'm gonna follow God, and I'm gonna memorialize this with a monument. And he looks around, and Jacob is looking around, and he sees the perfect thing to use to mark this occasion. He takes his pillow. Do you remember what it was? It was a big rock, right? He takes the rock or his pillow or his rock, and he flips it up on end and stands it up. And he marks that as the spot for the memory. It's kind of like when you play sports and you get a trophy and you take that trophy and you put it on your dresser. It kind of is a memorialize. It's something to help you remember that season that you played, that time when you won those games, and the time when you earned that trophy. This was a spot that God had said, I'm going to give you all these children. I'm going to give you this land that you're on. And he marks this spot and he calls it Bethel. God desires and wants us to be part of his family. We heard the promise, the covenant, as I said earlier, twice now, that he is going to give descendants to somebody in his people, Abraham and then Jacob. Now, remember, when he first promised Abraham that he was going to give him the number of descendants that were equal stars in the sky, Abraham couldn't count that. He couldn't count that. He even said, I can't count that. It's too many. How's this going to happen? I wonder if Jacob had the same thought. How am I going to have, But here's the funny thing about that. Jacob is one of the stars in Abraham's descendant line. And guess what? If you believe in God and you believe in Jesus, you are one of those stars. You, my friend, are one of those grains of sand that Jesus and God are talking about when it comes to being descendants of God, of Abraham's family, of Jacob's family. So guys, I hope you're kind of delving into this. I hope you're getting into your Bible and reading through Genesis and reading these stories. Man, what incredible stories they are about how the world came to be and how our faith kind of was drastically changed with sin, but we start to see the plan that God is formulating to get us back. So guys, verse is coming up next. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you're staying cool. I've been watching the weather and it's been hot everywhere. So guys, stay cool, eat a popsicle, and we will talk to you next time. Have a great day. Have a great week. Bye. Let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. Galatians 6:10.